How are you guys doing? Welcome to my review for The Flash Season 5, Episode 20, titled Gone Rogue. This episode, I gotta say, I didn't really like it. I didn't love it. I think there were a lot of things wrong with it, as opposed to a lot of the season lately. I feel like, again, ever since Episode 15, the season has been really good. Episode 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, not 20. I didn't think 20 was a very good episode. Thorne wasn't in the episode at all. There weren't very much interesting, action or plot developments or acting between the characters. I felt like this episode felt a little bit filler at times. It obviously was not at all. In fact, there was a pretty huge plot point that was kind of rushed in this episode, and I'll get to all that in this review, obviously. But just off the bat, I wanted to say that even though I'm loving The Flash Season 5 lately, I did not like this episode very much. This episode brought together a couple villains, or Excess really brought together a couple villains from the past, from mostly this season, but one character who did not appear in the season at all before this episode. But it brings together three villains to form a new version of the Rogues. They're calling the Young Rogues, but these villains are Ragdoll, Weather Witch, and Bug-Eyed Bandit. Now, Ragdoll, he's pretty awesome. I love his powers. He's really creepy because of his powers and his mask, and I don't think he was used well in this episode because all he did was really use his powers. He wasn't the leader of this team, which, since he's like the best villain out of the three, he probably could have been, or obviously except for Excess. But the worst part about him is that he was punched by Iris, and that took him out, which really bothers me. That was one of the stupidest moments of the show. I don't understand why every single craziest stupid moment of the show is Iris being just like a complete superhero for no reason. She took out a supervillain who has superpowers with a single punch in this episode, and that really pissed me off. But then there's also Weather Witch, who's fine. She's an okay villain. I don't really have many opinions about her. I do like her powers, or her power through the item she has, but aside from that, there's nothing really there. But then there is Bug-Eyed Bandit, who in the past has been the worst villain on the entire universe, at least in Arrow and the Flash. Like, on Arrow and the Flash standards, she's horrible. Last time we saw her was in Arrow Season 4, which even for Arrow Season 4, the episode she'd appeared in was really bad. It was one of the worst episodes of what is a terrible season. Every moment she appeared, there was a B pun, and the actress was pretty terrible in the past. For some reason, in this episode, she feels very different for some reason. Maybe it's because she took off the glasses, maybe because she's way less cheesy, and there's only one B pun, which, that's one B pun too many. But at the same time, I feel like she changed a little bit, and she's nowhere near as over the top as she was in the past. That being said, I don't like this team that much. Ragdoll's cool, but the other two are nothingness. They're not really good villains at all, and what the Rogues should be are a couple awesome villains who band together to either take out the Flash or just make some money, and this didn't really feel like that at all, except, again, Ragdoll is cool, but he was knocked out by one punch from Iris. In terms of the actual storyline of why Excess is teaming up with the bad guys, so she was infused with the negative energy Speed Force, and the negative Speed Force, and she came back in time, but it seems like there's a lot more nuance to the character than I expected there to be, based off the fact that she was infused by the negative Speed Force. I expected that to just completely take over and make her evil, in a sense, which is why she was teaming up with the bad guys. It turns out that's not exactly true. She is the same person, and she's not exactly evil here. She's trying to get a device that I think Thawne told her about, so they can destroy Cicada's dagger, which I think will happen next episode, and then the last episode will be all about the Reverse Flash. But then I do think there's a lot more better nuance to the character than I expected there to be. She's not exactly being completely controlled and manipulated by the negative Speed Force and Reverse Flash. I didn't love this storyline, don't get me wrong. I don't think that this whole storyline, the way they executed it, was very good. There's a lot of really stupid moments. Again, there was a B pun. There's also the scene at the end where it's revealed that all these people, all these hostages, are members of Team Flash. It was a very corny, very stupid moment in terms of Joe and Iris. They looked ridiculous. I don't understand why they were wearing those glasses. It made them look so stupid, but the entire moment I felt was so cliche and so corny and so cheesy. and honestly kind of cringy. I mean, I do think that they kind of might have blown their budget on the last episode, like a lot of their budget, because of all the Killer Frost and Icicle scenes that looked like they were pretty expensive. But in this episode, because in this episode, there are no real fight scenes. The scenes we see between the Flash and XS, or the Flash and the Rogues, do look very, not exactly good. They look a little stiff in these moments. I don't know why. I just think that the actual action in this episode looked pretty bad for the most part. It felt like they really were trying to do something where they weren't using a lot of their budget, which is fine because the last episode did have a lot of big CGI moments that I really liked, but this episode suffered because of it. I think. I'm not sure about what the budget scenario is here, but that's just what I think is going on, because this episode just felt so cheap in my opinion, but there were some good moments nonetheless. In the end of this storyline, Barry and Nora reconcile their differences, and now they're back together as a father and daughter duo, which I think was a little bit rushed. I think the amount of episodes they took to get to this conclusion for Barry and Nora was good. It was 2 episodes, the last episode and this one, where at the end of this one, they reconciled, but I think the way they had this storyline in this episode, it felt like they reconciled a little bit too quickly. It felt like it was all rushed into the reconciliation. Honestly, right at the beginning of the episode, Barry was thinking that everything he did was completely wrong in terms of how he treated Nora, which I felt like they could have used a little bit more nuance there. So it felt like there was only really one episode where this conflict between them was there. In this episode, the conflict was very one-sided. It was really just Nora being mad at Barry for what Barry did to her earlier. But I don't know. I didn't love the conflict in this episode, and I didn't love the reconciliation. I think it was a little bit rushed, despite the fact that the number of episodes they had was good. It's just the way they used those episodes, or really this episode, that I felt it just made it feel a little bit rushed, if not very rushed. That being said, the moment where they actually did reconcile was definitely a nice one, and I think it definitely fits for the number of episodes of the season and the way the season is going. It's really just this episode alone, the way they got to that moment. In this episode, there's a scene where Barry and Iris argue about Nora and Thawne, where it seems like Iris kind of trusts Thawne a lot more than she should, and also she trusts Nora a lot more than Barry does. Iris definitely lost this argument. She didn't really make any sense in this argument, and I think this argument, although was pretty good in terms of the acting from the two, actor and actress, I think that it worked really well, but at the same time, narratively, it makes no sense whatsoever for it to happen, because in the last episode, they agree that they're not going to argue about this anymore, which they mentioned in this episode as well, which, I mean, it's realistic that they're going to say they're not going to argue, but then they do. That's very realistic, but narratively, it's pretty frustrating when they say they're not going to do something, and then they do it literally the next episode, and even mention the fact that they said they're not going to do it. I don't like that. I don't really think it worked narratively, but I did really like the scene, because the argument where, like, the two actor and actress, they do have chemistry, at least in argument scenes, and I think it really worked here. There's also a pretty minor plot point, which is that Sherlock kind of convinces Cisco that he doesn't want to be Vibe anymore, or at least suggests that he doesn't want to be Vibe anymore, which it seems like Cisco does not. I don't think there's really enough screen time left in the season for them to conclude that storyline, because episode 21 is all about the showdown between Team Flash and Cicada, and then episode 22 is all about a showdown between Team Flash and Reverse Flash, which are 2 episodes that I don't feel like there could be a lot of this drama left for Cisco. I mean, they definitely can. We're going to have to wait and see if they are actually doing that, where Cisco has a pretty big role in these episodes, or he sacrifices himself in the end, or he quits being Vibe in the end. I just don't think they should focus on that, because there's not a lot of screen time left for those 2 conclusions to the season between Team Flash and Cicada, and then between Team Flash and Reverse Flash. That being said, in this episode, it's fine. The scenes are fine with Cisco. There is a pretty terrible looking scene where Sherlock and Cisco take down all of Bug-Eye Bandit's bees. I mean, the scene just looks really stupid the way they shot it, and that's one thing I really didn't like. A lot of things I did not like about the episode. I didn't hate the episode at all. I thought it was okay, but it definitely was a huge downgrade compared to what we've seen in The Flash Season 5 recently. That being said, I don't think it'll damage the season at all. I mean, looking at my favorite season of the Arrowverse, which is also a Season 5, Arrow Season 5, the 20th episode, just like this one, or even to a higher degree, is not good of that season because of very specific reasons. This is not anywhere near as bad as that episode, and it definitely furthers the main plot of the season way more than that episode does as well. So I'm not going to say this is going to ruin the season or even the ending of the the season whatsoever, but it's just not a very good episode in the end. There's also Ralph and Caitlin's storyline, which I thought was fine. I'm not going to really touch on that. I did like the scene between Ralph and Caitlin, where Caitlin talked about how Ralph should use his own book to find love as well. I'm hoping they do introduce Ralph's wife from the comic, Sue something, I don't know her name, but Sue Dibney is her name when they get married or after they get married, so I'm hoping we see that at least in the next season. But in the end, this episode is definitely a huge downgrade from the rest of the season that we've seen lately, at least ever since episode 15 of the season, or maybe even 14. I don't really remember when it started, but anyway, I did think this episode was fine, kind of mediocre, maybe at least okay, or I mean at most okay, but anyway, I'll give it a 7.4 out of 10. But let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below. I'm still very excited for the ending of the season, especially the actual finale where Reverse Flash will show up. But let me know if you are excited for that in the comments down below. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.